Hello everyone. So I apologize for bad lighting. My ring light has gone missing. I don't know where it went. This is what I have to work with right now, and for now this is, not great, but it's a start. I have been wanting to do this video for a while, and I have not gotten around to it. Now I have a little more free time. Christmas was hectic, but but Christmas is over, so I have, a little bit of free time. One of the things that really bothered me, and I don't know if anybody else was particularly bothered by this, but it did very much bother me, was the fact that I have this YouTube channel. I talk about men, men's issues, men's rights, men's welfare and well-being inside of our society. And right away, the first thing I do when I get a job is file a sexual harassment claim against one of my coworkers. I was just like, fuck. And there's an irony to that. It's like, okay, well, what happened? I feel that I should at some point give some explanation, and so I might as well do that now. I know at the time there was one person who was very concerned, and they were very upset that I had done it. This isn't necessarily a video about them, but if they're still out there watching, I'm going to give you a little bit of explanation as to why, because I think the why is kind of important. I'm not the kind of person who gets bothered by sexual comments. Like, 8 years as a dancer, I've heard it all, I've seen it all. I've had guys whip their dicks out right in front of me like, hey, take a look at this. It's like, no thank you. Put that away, sir. I've been through all that, and so it doesn't really bother me if someone's like catcalling me at work. I do not care. That wasn't why I reported my coworker. Another concern that was voiced was, he might have a job. What about his well-being? What about him? I was really funny because the guy who commented was like, he might have a family to support. And I was like, I have a family to support. He has a raging alcohol habit to support. There's a difference. Which, again, I'll get into that a little more. So let's start at the beginning. I got hired at a Walmart. So now y'all know where I worked. Got hired at a Walmart. I really enjoyed my time there. I spent a little over a year there. That first year was really, really awesome. The beginning of the second year wasn't too bad, but I was just struggling with so many conflicts with my family and my work, and one of those things is important in the long term, and one of them really isn't. It's not like I plan to climb the corporate ladder at Walmart, so I quit my job. But at the time that I got the job, we were having some money problems, and it really, we needed the money. Like, I didn't want to go get a job at a Walmart, but we needed the money. And it was great. I really liked my coworkers. I'm still trying to keep in touch with a lot of them. I saw one of them today, and I just kind of ran into her because I had to go pick up some groceries, and she was there, and I gave her a big hug, and I was just like, it's so good to see you. Yeah, I really liked the time that I spent there. I have a lot of very fond memories of my time there, which probably sounds really dumb because I was literally lifting and moving boxes all day. I was unloading trucks, and that was what I did. And I loved it because it was a little bit of exercise. It kept me busy. All the time kind of flew by. I had a good time while I was there. If I had a much longer lifespan, or if I could somehow divide myself up into multiple people, one of those people would have stayed at Walmart. One of those people would have stayed on Cap 2, unloading the trucks. That was my happy place for a good long while. And you go home, the kids are crazy, they're running around like mad, they're fighting, they're screaming. Part of that is because they didn't have a mom anymore. And it's like, what do I want to do? I want to go back to work where, I can unload boxes and just kind of have a little bit of peace and quiet. So it was a good year in that sense. The exercise was really good for me. I got the job when my youngest was 7 weeks old. He was 7 weeks old. I did not want to leave him alone, but we needed the money, and so I just kind of, toughened up and did what I had to do. So my 7-week-old baby was at home where I couldn't see him and I couldn't hold him, and I was working a full-time job. That was a little tough. That was not something, again, that I wanted, but, times are hard and we need money. So there I was. When I first got there, I was really sad because nobody wants to leave their 7-week-old baby at home. And I had just gotten medical leave to go back to work, so I was fat. Because I just had a baby. I was fat, and my husband was still struggling with the brain tumor at that point. We didn't know it was a brain tumor. And he had just, within a month or two of me getting the job, he went and got tested, and then they found out that it was a brain tumor. So it was just not a great time for me. And all my coworkers were much younger than I was, like 12 or more years younger than I was, except for two. One of them was about 16 years older than I was, and the other one was right about my age. And that guy, I, went and worked with him because you got to pair up and work in teams, and so I went and worked with him. And the two of us are chatting, and, he's kind of probably a little too heavy on the alcohol, maybe a borderline alcoholic, whatever. And, you're working together, you're in teams, you're paired up. So we were talking, and, got through the day, and I don't know if it's like this at every Walmart. For us, we did end up pairing up because I was brand new, and so they were like, okay, you follow him and he'll show you how to do the job, and that's what happened. And so, got through the day. He showed me how to do the job. It was nice and everything. Didn't really think anything of it. I have a 7-week-old baby. Like, I'm not thinking about dating anyone. I don't know if you guys are familiar with women right after they have a baby and when they're breastfeeding a baby. It's just not necessarily the first thing on our minds. Oh, hey, I met this dude, I'm gonna go hook up with him. Like, it just wasn't on my radar. I wasn't paying attention. I'm married. That's another reason it's not on my radar. And I haven't had a job since I retired as a dancer, which was many, many years ago. So it was like, well, I'm a little old, so I'm not in that headspace, I've got a husband with a brain tumor. I've got a newborn baby that I don't get to see. I've got 3 other children. Like, I've got shit in my life. I'm not thinking about the fact that I'm talking to this guy who's single. You talk to him a little bit, you find out he's single. It's like, okay, well, he mentions he's trying to get a date with this one girl. I'm like, hey, dude, good luck, I hope it works out for you. A little while later, oh, it didn't work out. Oh, man, I'm sorry. Well, maybe the next one will work for you. Tries another girl. Yeah, it didn't work out. Oh, well, I'm sorry, man. Sooner or later, you'll find one who works out for you. Talk to him a little bit, find out that he's got a serious alcohol problem. It's like, hey, have you ever thought that maybe if you kind of laid back on the alcohol a little bit, things would be easier with you in relationships with girls? No, that's not going to work. Okay, well, your funeral. You're not in romance mode, okay? Like, I was working. I was doing a job. I was happy because I was lifting boxes. I was getting some exercise. I started losing weight. I started, deflating after having a baby. That's what happens. I mean, and it was a rough pregnancy, too. It was the roughest pregnancy I've ever had. And I had one that ended, in abortion because of medical problems. That one was not as hard as this one. It did things to me. I'm not okay, all right? I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder after that pregnancy. It was a rough pregnancy. And so it was really nice to be lifting boxes, kind of just having some time to sort through my own head as I'm moving the boxes from here to there. And, watching in the mirror as I literally just shrank down, exercise, manual labor will do that for you. And so I noticed some of my muscles coming back. They're gone now because I haven't worked in a while. The last couple of months I switched shifts, and there's not that much manual labor to be had at Walmart, sadly. So, my arms were starting to look good again. I was starting to notice my stomach was sort of not as balloony, and I wasn't paying attention to that in a sexual sense either. I tend to look at it as, oh my God, I just feel so much more comfortable inside my body. I don't feel like a walking seal with like blubber hanging everywhere. Like, it wasn't like I was trying to show it off to anybody either. Like, we're wearing big baggy vests. I mean, and come on, I'm a small person, and so the vest they had on me was like I was like walking around in a tent. I thought, like, they were like, well, pick out your size. And I'm like, well, normally I don't buy t-shirts. And so I was like, okay, well, I think I'm usually a medium. Whew. I was wrong. It was a men's medium. Like, it was just it's not like you could see what I looked like. I was not, I think sometimes it's really easy to think that I was like flouncing around in front of him with like lingerie or like a really low neckline and some makeup and, I'm really not that kind of girl. This is as fancy as I do my hair these days. I put a braid in. Fancy. Very fancy. Yeah, I was not trying to look sexy. And on top of that, like, it's manual labor. You're hot, you're sweaty, you got your hair up in a ponytail. That's one of the reasons that I cut it off, by the way. Like, it was hot and sweaty work, and I was tired of my ponytail getting in the way, and my hair was bothering me, and so I was like, I'll just cut off the back. A little more, a little more, a little more. It's one of the reasons. The other reason is this guy and his, sexual issues. So, I'm being, I think, in my opinion, appropriately and very neutrally amiable towards my fellow worker in a work environment. I don't believe that I was flirting with him in any way that I shouldn't have been, like, at all. Anyway, but he started crushing on me, and it was pretty obvious. Everybody knew it. And I'm just kind of like, okay, well, that's life. I guess it happens. Whatever. I've got my own issues. I've got so many of my own issues. I broke down crying in front of my boss one day because I was just so upset. I ended up getting a therapist, because I had so much shit going on in my life. And my husband had a brain tumor. And then my therapist tells me that I'm bipolar, and it's like, well, yes, I am. Great, wonderful. So, all this stuff is happening in my life. Not paying attention, like, guy has his crush, whatever. But I was starting to feel better. I was starting to feel stronger. At some point, like, I wanted to do it the first time I saw it. And the thing I wanted to do is they have the truck, and they've got it all piled up with boxes, and somebody goes in, they take the boxes out of the truck, and they put them onto the belt, and they wheel it down, and then everybody takes the boxes off the belt and puts them in their appropriate places. At least that's how we did it at our store. I know other stores are different, but that's how we did it at ours. I saw them unloading the truck, and I was like, I want to do that. That looks like a workout, because you're spending multiple hours just lifting boxes and moving them, and lifting and then moving. There's no walking. There's no walking back. There's no break in between. It's just all lift, move, lift, move. And I was like, I want to try that. So, I waited, I don't know how many weeks or months, I don't know how long. It wasn't that long after I got hired, but I waited a while. I started building up some muscle. I started feeling better, and I was like, okay, I want to try that. And I didn't want to say, oh, I want to do that, because I was terrified I was going to get through like 30 minutes and be like, okay, this is way more than I thought I could do. But I was like, I really want to try that. I told my boss, I was like, can I try that? And so I don't know if we had any women who actually did that. And at that time, I know we didn't. Like, after I got into it, some of the others started trying it, but at the time it was just me. Other than that, it was all these tall guys who were like in their 20s, and they were like way above me. And it's like, okay, this short little midget who's kind of still really fat because she just had a baby, I want to do it too. So I tried it, and I loved it. I was so happy. Like, it was just solid exercise, and it reminded me just a little bit. It was just that thin whisper of what I used to have when I worked in the strip club, which is just straight up exercise. For as many hours as you're there, you just work your ass off. And so I was really happy, because it just gave me that little teeny hint of what I used to have. And I was skipping around the Walmart, like literally skipping. I was so happy. And this guy, he noticed that I was happy, And on top of that, I was happy doing something that didn't involve him. Because when we're all working on the belt, you know, I can talk with him, I can talk with my other coworkers. I tried to chat with everybody, and, you know, it was all cool. Nobody else talked to him, and I thought that was a little weird. It's like, okay, well, you know, I don't know. I don't know why nobody else talks to him, but I'm not good at picking up social cues, and so it didn't really trigger any warning bells that no one else talked to him. And, like, he didn't go out with anybody else on break. Like, everybody went on break in one spot, and then he would go somewhere else on break. Like, not creepy, like, he would be in the break room, but he'd go somewhere else. I never understood why that was either until much later, and part of the problem with that was I was going to the lactation room, and I was pumping breast milk for the baby. So I didn't notice that everybody would go on break, and he would go off alone, because he wasn't really welcome with everybody else. It wasn't like they told him not to go. It was like I found out later, he'd managed to piss off every other person there to the degree that they didn't want to be around him, and so they just avoided him. And he knew it, and so he just sulked in the break room, like, every single day. I didn't know any of that because, again, I was in the lactation room, so I found all this later. I learned about all this later. So, yay. But he really hated, number one, that I was happy, and number two, that I was happy without him. He wanted me to be happy with him. He wanted me to be talking with him. He wanted me to be spending my time working on the belt instead of in the truck so that I could interact with him. And so he started trying to make my time in the truck as difficult as he possibly could. And I kept on telling him to leave me alone because he would, every time a box fell down, you know, he'd peer in the truck. Are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, yes, I'm fine. Leave me alone. Let me work. 5 seconds later, are you okay? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm doing my job. You do your job. 5 seconds later, are you okay? It's like, dude, do you do this to, you know, I named some other guy. Do you do this to him when he's working back here? No? Okay. Well, what about this other guy when he's doing it? Do you bother him? What about that guy when he's doing it? Do you bother him like this? Why am I the only person that you're constantly asking, are you okay? Leave me alone. Let me concentrate on my work. Stop interrupting me. So, you know, he wouldn't. He didn't. I started, because, I mean, it was annoying, and everybody knew why he was doing it. And so I started trying to make myself less attractive to him. I was like, dude, I'm a dude. I want you to treat me like I'm a dude. Imagine that I got big fucking hairy old balls, and I want you to treat me exactly like you treat him and him and him. I want you to treat me like I'm one of the men, okay? So I want you to envision me with a big fucking cock and leave me the fuck alone. Well, he didn't. So I just started explaining what my penis looked like to him every single time. Are you okay? You know what? My penis looks like this. My dick is bigger than yours is. Leave me the fuck alone. You know, it went on like that for a while. Like, it was harassment. You know, it was a little bit harassing, and that wasn't the reason that I filed the claim. He tried to make my life as miserable as possible. He started complaining that I got to work on the truck because he wanted to work on the truck. And he started demanding that he work on the truck too because he knew it made me happy. So suddenly he was very interested in working on the truck. And only one person does it. So, you know, we had to take turns. I tried talking with him about a reasonable way to take turns because there was another guy who liked to do it too. And I didn't have a problem with that other guy doing it because the other guy, you know, he'd have a day every once in a while and be like, hey man, can I do the truck today? I'd be like, sure, you know, that's cool. Like, I don't have a problem with that. Like, I'm not going to complain. You're not asking to do it every single day just to keep me out of it. So I don't have a problem with that. You know, it's a fun job. I think everybody should have a chance to do it. I just didn't like the fact that this one guy was trying to keep me out of it. So I tried to talk to him about it, and he was like, well, I need it worse than you do because my life is harder than yours. And I'm just sitting there like, because you're an alcoholic who can't keep his shit together, you don't have any responsibilities, and the only problem you have is that you can't get out of your own head. Great, wonderful. Your life is so damn hard. I don't really like people who are drug addicts because they have a tendency to be dishonest with themselves and then be dishonest with everybody around them, but also they just can't take responsibility for their own problems. Every problem that I ever saw this guy run into entirely a result of his own bad choices and bad behaviors. Yes, I understand that some people simply end up in shitty situations. God knows I've ended up in quite a lot of them myself. And I do understand that sometimes life is just hard and you don't have any good choices. You have bad choice A and bad choice B, and it's like, well, which one seems worse? Take the other one. I've seen that happen in my life. I've seen it happen in a lot of my friends' lives. Like, sometimes you just end up in shit. This guy had spent like over 30 years of his life making choices that led him up to where he was right at that point. And it wasn't like I was in a better place because I was working at Walmart too. It wasn't that. It was the fact that he was in assisted living, drinking up his paychecks, and driving everyone around him away because he played the pity me card ad nauseum. He never took responsibility for any of his problems. He never did anything to get better. He never did anything to fix himself. Like, I'm not even talking about the alcohol. He never did anything to fix himself. Imagine the guy who lives in his mom's basement eventually got kicked out of his mom's basement and had to go on assisted living and get a job at a Walmart. This is that guy. He was not exactly, like, he was not a particularly nice person. He acted nice. He would have really benefited if he ever got it into his head to fix himself, which people who've known him for nearly a decade have told me this is how he is, like, just baseline. In fact, he's slowly but surely getting worse as the years pass, probably because of the excessive alcohol intake. I don't see this guy recovering, but if he ever did want to recover, the first book I'd recommend is No More Mr. Nice Guy. Like, not even kidding. He's like taken straight out of the pages of that book. Constantly being nice to people with the constant expectation that he's going to get something back. And the people he's being nice to? Women. So this dude said sexually inappropriate things to every single woman on our shift. All of them. Yeah, I mean, that was not so good. And I mean, I really, sexually inappropriate things do not bother me. Like, I've dealt with so much of it that it just does not hit me. When he's interrupting me while I'm trying to do my job, I have a problem with that. That's not so nice, you know? I'm trying to do my job. Let me do my job. Then on top of that, he got a real bug up his ass about the fact that I was married. So anytime that I mentioned having a husband, having a family, which I have a husband and I have a family, he would complain that I was talking about inappropriate stuff at work. This is a dude who keeps porn on his work phone. Like, pictures of tits, pictures of vaginas on his work phone. But I'm being inappropriate by mentioning that I went out for dinner with my husband. Okay. So every time I mentioned anything involving my family, he'd cut me off, he'd change the subject. Like, it wasn't stuff that I was saying directly to him, it was stuff I was saying to other people, and he would interrupt me while I was talking. Like, he did not like me having another guy on this planet that wasn't him that I bone. Which, by the way, I do have sex with my husband. Deal with it. That was annoying, but by this point I realized that this person was basically put on earth to make my life as unpleasant as he possibly could, and so I was just doing my best to ignore him, you know? One day, I remember, like, he was just annoying, and I was trying to make myself seem less and less appealing to him, so I was becoming increasingly aggressive toward him, increasingly, like, just back off, man. One day, I was talking with one of my other coworkers, because I didn't like talking to him, about how I wanted to, you know, just shave the back of my head so that I didn't have to deal with that ponytail at work because it was just so hot and sweaty. And I was like, I really just wish I could shave my head. And he's like, oh, that's so unattractive. I was like, did you say unattractive? What else do you find unattractive? Please, pray tell. I want to hear about it, please. Apparently women with hairy armpits. So, you know, that night I go running home. Very excited. I come home. I wake my husband up because he'd fallen asleep. I was like, honey, I need to borrow some of your chest hair. I cut off, like, some of his chest hair, like the really thick curly stuff. I trimmed it down a bunch. And, you know, the thicker, curlier, like the really thick stuff. And then just patted severed chest hair all over my armpit. And then I took several pictures One of which in particular I was quite proud of. I tried to make myself look as unappealing as possible. Yes, that's a man's shirt. Like I got it in the menswear department, but I've been wearing those for ages. Like all my old videos, I was usually wearing that and a hoodie. But I wore that. I brushed my hair back so that you couldn't see any of my hair. I tried to hide that. I've got my hand my arm sort of covering the fact that I have boobs as much as possible. I sort of I sort of flexed my muscles as much as possible. Just tried to think of anything that would make me look as ugly as possible to this dude. And then I had one of my coworkers show him a picture. And I'm grinning like a demon in that picture because it was like the whole time I was thinking, fuck you, man, fuck you. Because I mean he was making life really unpleasant. I'm forgetting a lot of details because it's been over a year now, but it's like I still remember like just, oh, he was not a nice person. At some point, he started hitting on, like, he gave up on me, which is good. But at some point, oh yeah, one time he told me that he wanted to wrap me up in bubble wrap, because I was complaining that he wasn't letting me do anything, because every time I picked something up, it's like, oh, let me get that. It's like, I'm supposed to lift this box. It is my job. I am here to lift boxes. Let me just lift the damn box, okay? Well, it's heavy. No, it's not. You know? Boxes of fucking pillows. I don't even care. Like anything. Like he just didn't want me, doing any work at my job where I was being paid to do work. Like, God. Anyway, one time he told me he wanted to wrap me up in bubble wrap to protect me. I was like, can I go vomit now, please? So yeah, that was going on. Anyway, he realized that he just probably sometime after the picture with the hairy armpit, he realized that he just didn't really stand a chance with me. And so he started hitting on one of my very young coworkers. Like she was a high school graduate, like a brand new high school graduate. He starts getting all creepy on her and she doesn't know how to handle it. So of course she goes to our boss, who's like, I think he was 23 at the time. So this poor young man who probably was not, I just can't see it being one of those things that you get prepped for when you're going in as a team lead at Walmart. Like, hey, so when one of your employees starts like harassing every single female employee on your team, here's how you should handle it. Like he was stellar. He did a great job. He handled it really well, but that's some shit I don't think anyone wanted to have to deal with. Like, I never particularly needed to know that he kept pictures of women's breasts and vaginas all over his phone. Like, why did he do that? It's your work phone! Oh my god. Like, I eventually, after like a year, finally reprogrammed mine so that it would show me pictures of flowers every time I logged on. But, like, that's as personalized as it got. Like, I got to see pretty flowers when I logged in. It's like, well, one little thing to brighten my day is a good thing. Tits, man. Lots of tits. Lots of genitalia. Woohoo! So, yeah, like, he was a handful. Like, I can't even imagine. But anyway, so he started harassing this one poor girl, and she went to our boss, and she was like, what do I do? And our boss just kind of looked at it and said, don't reply to that. Do not, like, it was a message, and he was like, don't reply to that. Really, or I don't think he even said don't reply. It was more of a, because it wasn't in an official capacity. It was in a, we were all on break and she found it and she was like, what? He's like, you don't have to answer that. And personally, I wouldn't answer that. So anyway, at that point, sexual harassment guy got kind of peeved because the girl he wanted had turned him down, and then the other girl he wanted had turned him down, and everybody was just turning him down left and right, which is very understandable because he was a real jerk. Like a real jerk. He was really alcoholic, like the kind of alcoholic who, number one, proudly drives drunk all around the town where I have my small children living. Also, I used to work in EMS. Don't brag to people who work in EMS that you drive drunk. It's just typically, I don't know about all EMS, I can't speak for all EMS, but after a person spends a year working on an ambulance, they just don't want to hear about how good you are at driving drunk. like, but also, he had a tendency to have money troubles because he spent all his money on alcohol, and so then he would take out loans and think that he was going to somehow pay that loan back, but then end up spending that money on alcohol too. So then he was trying to do all sorts of crazy things with money so that he could pay off his debts and continue to spend excessive amounts of money on alcohol. He was not the brightest man in the world. He probably would have been smarter if he wasn't constantly drunk. And coming into work drunk all the time, too. That was always a fun thing when he'd come in, weaving around, slurring his words, mumbling. One time he vomited on the floor. Our boss ended up cleaning it up, I think. Either that or... Yeah, no, I think he cleaned it up. I'm so sorry that happened anyway. Yeah. One time he took off his shoes and ran barefoot through the cooler because... I think he thought it was a smart idea to, take his shoes off in order... I don't know what... There were a lot of moments where nobody really knew or understood what this guy was thinking. But anyway, let me just say also, I love my coworkers. All the rest of them were really, really awesome. I never would have imagined when I got the job at Walmart that I would have cared so much for the people that I worked with. Just awesome people, and it was an awesome time for me, and I was getting healthier, and I was starting to recognize my body in a mirror all again, and it was a really good time for me. It was really good for me, but nothing is perfect, and he's harassing this one girl, and she's just kind of ignoring it because everybody kind of ignored this guy's crap as much as they could, because nobody wants to be, honestly, at least for our group, nobody wants to be that one person who complains. We all just kind of looked at it, was okay, we got to deal with this guy. Nobody wants to be that person who complains, and I definitely didn't want to be that person who complains. It's look, I hate the way women use sexual harassment claims to punish men they don't like for just being people. A lot of the times, it's I know so many men are afraid to just talk to women because they're afraid those women are going to get offended. And for me, that's the kind of conversation I want to have with men. I want to just hang out and be one of the guys and talk about, whatever, and not really feel concerned with mincing words. I am a horrible person when it comes to taking my foot and sticking it squarely in my mouth. God forbid anybody else should have to watch what they say around me. That's not what I want. And so, I did not want to complain about this dude. Was he being annoying? Yes. Was he distracting me from my work? Yeah, I tried to ignore that as much as possible. I didn't want to complain about him, and neither did this other girl. She looked at this text, she's that's really creepy. She ignored it. Life was good. There was one night I came into work and I had really bad stomach cramps. I don't know what happened. I think it was something I ate. No, it wasn't my period. I ate something, or I had mild I don't know, food poisoning. I don't know how food poisoning works, but for whatever reasons, my stomach just kept on cramping really, really hard. And I told my boss, if I run to the bathroom and I don't come out for a while, I'm sick. I am sick and I do not feel good. And so I was throwing the truck again, and I was just trying to work through the pain and just get through it. And I mean, my coworkers were there, my boss was there. These are people that I liked, and so I just sort of chatted with them, and I got through my day. I did my job. I got my workout in. I told myself this is good for me. I tried to, you know how when you're in pain, especially with some sort of cramp or something like that, you have the spike of the pain and then it starts to go down. You just kind of ride that low point and then it spikes up again. It's okay, just get through this, and then it kind of goes down again. I was doing that all fucking day. I was tired. I didn't feel good. We finally finished the truck. Our shift ended, and I looked at it, was I am going home right now. I need to go home. I am sick. I do not feel well. They had instituted some sort of new policy where they had to keep the doors locked. It was right after there was a shooting in our area, and so they put in some sort of new safety rule. Technically, it was because of the shooting. More likely, it was also because they just didn't want to have to deal with as much theft, and so if they kept the doors locked, there was less theft at the store. But anyway, I went to leave the store and the doors were locked and I couldn't get out. Now, my original complaint with that was, if they lock the doors, how are we supposed to get out in case of an emergency, like a fire? Like, how do we exit the store? And so someone told me that if you hit the door in just the right way and move it in just the right way, you can open the door even if it's locked. Okay, good to know in case of fire. Whatever. I got there, the doors were locked. I couldn't leave. Now, I had already clocked out, so I'm sitting there in front of the door, waiting. And waiting and waiting. And someone was supposed to come and let us out, but nobody did. Eventually, sexual harassment dude comes along. I'm like, I need to go home. I don't feel well. He's like, yeah, well, they should be here soon. I'm like, I do not feel well. I am sick. I need to go home. I am clocked out and I have every right to leave. He's like, yeah, well, I'll go get a manager. So I sat there and I waited and I waited. Like 15 minutes goes by. Like, it was 15 minutes after I had clocked out. So this is 15 free minutes of my time that Walmart is getting because I can't leave because they locked me in while I was clocked out and they wouldn't let me out. And then he comes back and there's no manager. I'm like, dude, what the fuck? What the hell? He's like, yeah, she says she has to finish moving some boxes first and she'll be right there. I was like, nope. No, I am in pain. I have been in pain all day. I am done being in pain. I'm going to go home and I'm going to take care of myself. So I turn around, I pop the door open, and I leave. And he's standing right there. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm not talking to him. I just turn around, I walk through the parking lot. I'm like, if they want to scold me, they can scold me. If they want to, if they want to, if they want to coach me, they can coach me. Like, I do not care. I am sick. I don't feel well, and they are not allowed to keep me locked in the store when I'm off the clock after my shift has ended. Like, this is bullshit. I'm going home. So I went home. I don't think they legally have a right to that. I can't remember. Somebody was telling me it was like unlawful imprisonment or something. I don't care. I know they weren't necessarily on the law's side when it comes to locking us in the store and not letting us out, especially after we clocked out and we wanted to go home. Anyway, the next morning I come in and I'm kind of a little nervous because I'm expecting to get coached or something. Nothing happens at first, and so I'm like, okay. And I mean, my coworkers, they know about it, so I'm kind of joking with them, like, this guy saw it, so, I bet he told management that I'm crazy or something like that. Like, I won't be surprised, because I was tired, I was mad, and I mean, I was in a lot of pain. I don't usually get sick like that, and so I was like, dude, I need to go home. Like, I am sick. And so, like, that all happened. Halfway through the day, night manager shows up. She's talking with my boss, and at some point, they called me, and I'm like, what's up? They're like, so, yeah, last night when you opened up the door, were you screaming and kicking the door and throwing a fit and acting like a crazy person? And I was like, no. I guess when I was joking with everyone else that, like, he probably told everyone I was just acting crazy. He did. He told everyone I was acting crazy. So I was like, okay, he's trying to get me in trouble. Like, he's trying to get me in trouble with my job, like, either to get me fired or to get me coached. That's what he's doing. Well, that's interesting. Okay, that's not so good. I'd better keep an eye out in the future. So anyway, a couple weeks go by, and there was one day, it was this guy that I get along with really well. I haven't seen him since I left work, and I really miss him. Like, I've been able to keep in touch with everyone else, but I miss this guy. Fun guy. And this girl that got the messages from sexual harassment dude, the three of us, I gave her a riddle, and she was trying to figure it out. And he found out about the riddle, and he started trying to figure it out. So I'm talking with the two of them, and they're working on this riddle, and she's really, really intent on figuring it out. And he figured it out like in an hour. And so we're all giggling about this riddle, and we're talking, and we're laughing, and we're moving the boxes around, and, we're just going through our day. Well, sexual harassment guy was working that day too, when he noticed all of us talking and laughing and basically being happy. And once again, we were happy, specifically me and this other girl who had never replied to his text. and it was doing something, we were doing something that didn't involve him. So he went and complained to management. And he said that he was being excluded. He was being, I think excluded was the word. Anyway, that we were basically breaking Walmart's policy because we weren't being inclusive to him, and we weren't, I didn't even really notice him. I was telling her the riddle, and then this other guy joined in, and, we were talking. Whatever. I wasn't paying attention. People, we were just living our lives, right? But, anyway, he went and complained, and so management had to investigate the complaint. And so they brought this girl in, and she was like, how dare he complain about me when he's sending me text messages like this? And I don't think he actually included, the only two people he complained about were me and that girl. He didn't complain about the guy. He never complained about the guys. It was always the women who were being mean to him. And I'm sitting there, when they pulled me in, because she wasn't supposed to tell me, but of course the first thing she does when they let her out is she runs over and is like, hey, they're going to call you to the back room just to give you a heads up. It's because of him. I was like, oh God, because that's some stress off I'm really grateful she told me that's some stress off my back, because it was I get nervous around authority figures. So anytime I think I'm in trouble, I get super nervous. If it's something to do with him, it's probably nothing bad. It's probably I knew it was something to do about him being unhappy with me for existing, because there was one night, I can't remember what I did that ticked this guy off, but at 3 a.m, he sent one of my coworkers a really angry, small novel stream of text about how I was a horrible person and everything was bad because of me, and it's just, oh God, I wasn't being very mean to him. I suppose he saw a picture of my pseudo hairy armpit, and I don't know if that's sexual harassment or not. I was dealing with him, so I was I don't know a better way to say back off than, number one, saying back off, and number two, showing you that I'm not an attractive lady under these clothes. Look at how hairy my armpits are. God, I'm proud of that picture. Anyway, so she let me know that he had been complaining about me. So when they called me to the back room, I go to the back room. There's two managers there, and they're talking with me about, what was said, that, we were excluding him, and that was, whatever. And he was like, would there be any complaints that you would have against him? And I was like, oh, yeah, I got a ton of complaints about him. And they were like, would you care to write any of them down? And I was like, give me a day. I'll type them up for you. The next day, my poor boss, I bring him 4 typewritten pages of complaints about this guy, and it's all crap that he pulled that was unpleasant, that was distracting me from doing my job. I tried to pick out things that were legitimate complaints, like him stopping me while I was trying to do my job, or preventing me from doing my job because he thought that I shouldn't lift boxes, which is my job, after I told him repeatedly to leave me alone and let me do my job. And it's not like I wasn't doing my job well. I don't think they would have let me throw the truck if I couldn't lift the boxes. This was not that kind of workplace where it's oh, we need to handle the women with kid gloves. I pulled my own. And I wanted to, because the exercise was making me healthy again. And I need that for me. So I worked my ass off, and I tried to keep up with everybody else. That was my whole goal. And I think I did a fairly decent job. So anyway, I bring this 4-page document in, and right away they open up a sexual harassment case, which, I looked at it and it was I'm listing all these complaints. They asked me to list my complaints about him. I told them I would bring them in. It's all about him basically wanting me to have sex with him, and me, and him then mistreating me at work as a result of me being not sexually receptive to him. This is going to be a sexual harassment claim. I've never done this before. This should be interesting. I've been sexually harassed by coworkers before. God knows, when I was very young, my first job, I had a guy who was really, very inappropriate, and I didn't know how to handle it because it was my first job, and so I just kind of froze up and acted scared. This time I'm a little older, and so it was like he's been inappropriate with me, and here's how. So then, they open the investigation, and the question is, what did he say that made you uncomfortable? It's like, well, he didn't really say anything that made me uncomfortable. He tried to get me fired at least once, probably twice, and that made me really uncomfortable because, again, I'm doing this job because my family needs the money, and so I am doing this to support my 4 small children, and I do not like being fucked with. But they did the investigation. They sent it into corporate, and corporate buried it under a pile of paperwork, and we never heard the end of it. Sexual harassment dude got shifted to another department, which made me happy because then none of us had to deal with him. I eventually switched to shifts. The one girl who he had sent the inappropriate text to, she got fired for not showing up to work, and so her evidence has since been invalidated. He still hasn't been fired. It's easier to get fired for not showing up to work at Walmart than it is for sexually harassing coworkers. Because it is, he's still working there. I quit. Everybody who's ever complained about him has quit. Other people have had this problem. There was one manager, he tried hitting on her, and eventually she, he wasn't getting anywhere with her, and eventually he switched to another department, and then he said it was because she was mean to him, and she's like, he was harassing me, he was being inappropriate. And I finally told him he was being inappropriate. That was it. I guess that's being mean. I switched shifts, and so I wasn't there anymore, and then after that, he went to my boss and asked for his job back, and my boss later told me, because I don't work at Walmart anymore, so I invited him over for dinner, and, he met my husband and, saw a bunch of my kids, but, and I gave him food. But he told me, I guess, that this guy came to him after I was gone and said that he wanted his old job back because the problem was not there anymore. And my boss had to sit down and explain to him that he was saying very sexually inappropriate things around the workplace and harassing the female workers. And that's why they didn't want him back on the shift. So yeah, I don't think I would have complained about him at all if he hadn't, tried to get me fired. That was a little bit of an issue for me. I have issues with people who try to interfere with things that I am doing to benefit my family. I kind of have a lot of issues with that for some crazy reason. I don't know. So then I had to complain about him, kind of. At that point, it was look, he's harassing me a lot, and he's trying to get me fired because I won't fuck him, and I don't really do that. I'm married to someone else, which he's clearly aware of. So yeah, that's the story. That's how I ended up filing a sexual harassment complaint about one of my coworkers. Lovely. Just a great time. Very fun was had all around. God. I still have a copy of that document somewhere. It really was 4 pages. And single space, 4 pages. 12-point Times New Roman. Yeah. Yeah. So as much as I I like men. I like men a lot, and I care about men's issues. I really do. I think it's important that people pay attention to men's issues. They are so very often swept under the rug in our society, and that's not okay. And somebody needs to speak up, and often men are not in a position where they really reasonably can speak up. There's so many times that if a man speaks up for himself, it makes him look weak, and it makes him look emasculated. And that's no good, and that's not fair to men. And I think people as humans, men and women, should observe when members of our society as humans are being in any way mistreated or discriminated against. And so, I have a lot of issues with sexual harassment complaints. I don't want to be doing them, and I don't actually know if anyone does. This experience has kind of shown me that there are most people in this world do not want to rock the boat. Most people in this world do not want to file a sexual harassment complaint. Yeah, there's that crazy lady at work who gets offended if someone like sneezes in front of her, or, you know, says the wrong thing, or says something that can be interpreted as the wrong thing. Like, you hear those stories all the time. And usually when people are saying those stories, it's like, oh my God, can you believe that this person actually complained about this? Oh my God. But in reality, especially like just like we were a bunch of manual laborers. We lifted boxes and moved them for a living. Like we were just normal people, and none of us wanted to complain about this guy, even though he said ridiculously inappropriate things to all of us. And really, I didn't want to complain about him. I just felt like I didn't have a choice. Like, sooner or later, he was either going to get me coached or fired. And it was like, you know, I don't want to deal with this. And I shouldn't have to deal with this, you know? Nobody should have to deal with that shit. Male, female, blue space person, I don't know. You shouldn't have to put up with that kind of shit. So yeah. Just to let you guys know, that's what went down when I filed a sexual harassment complaint against one of my coworkers. It sucked. It was a shitty situation, and this guy's not going to improve. He's not going to get better, and he got moved to another department, so I feel it's really funny because several of us saw him, like, talking to women on his new department, like, that he works with now, and it was just like, oh, good luck, you know. He's gonna do the same thing to you, so, you know, I'm sorry. People who've lived in his apartment complex, you know, assisted living apartment complex, they have stories to tell about some really inappropriate things he's done with women in that apartment complex. And when I say inappropriate, I mean like coercive kinds of things that he's done. Like, the guy's a real creep. I'm not making that part up. Like, he is a real, genuine, honest to God. If he hasn't raped somebody yet, I won't be shocked if he does at some point in his life. That kind of guy. And I'm not just saying this because he and I didn't get along well. All the other people that he worked with, like all the people that he and I both worked with, like, they were like, yeah, would not be shocked if he had raped somebody. Like, he's just that kind of a person. They exist. Now, that being said, all the other dudes that I worked with, awesome dudes, stellar dudes. I really liked them. Like, there's a reason that I'm inviting my former coworkers to come over and meet my family and have dinner at my house. Like, these are good people. And so it was interesting. It was an interesting experience. I definitely value it. But that's it for tonight. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas, and I'm wishing you all a very happy New Year. I'll talk to you guys later.